Today we're going to be experimenting with a couple things. We're going to make a couple of beach coasters, a square and a round. I'll be using Let's Resin 1-to-1 epoxy resin. This is a high gloss, clear coat resin. I love working with it, and part B is the hardener, so we're going to start with that. And I'll be using this pump here to get the resin into the cup. It's actually a nice little tool to have, keeps the mess down and makes pouring a lot easier when you're working with these ginormous jugs. So I'm going to put 2 ounces of the hardener in, which is part B, followed by part A. Give this a stir. And once this is done, we'll let it set for 5 minutes to get the bubbles out. All right, this is pretty well mixed. We'll set this aside in a second here, and I'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, it's been 5 minutes. And today we're also experimenting with this new Let's Resin heating mat. I bought this because making coasters can be up to a 3-day process when you're using a regular resin and the technique that you use. So I've got the mat here, and it is sitting on top of my glass leveling table, which may not be a good idea. Got a silicone mat on the top of it, and then we've got the Let's Resin heating mat. There is a timer, so you can set this for a certain number of hours. What I don't like is that I can't adjust the heat. It's the same temperature throughout, so I can't set it to a medium or a high heat or a low heat. Nice and smooth, very thin, and you can see that is the dot from my leveling table. So it is showing me that the area I'm working on is level. So I'm going to demonstrate how to do the square coaster, and I will be filling the round ones on the side. This is an acrylic pouring paint, and I'm going to be using that instead of a paste, instead of an opaque paste. This one happens to be a sapphire color, and this is from Mixed Media Girl. And I'm going to be using a dark blue mica powder from Let's Resin. Then for my turquoise, I'm going to use a turquoise, which is also from Mixed Media Girl, and another lighter green kind of turquoise powder from Let's Resin, and may throw some of this glitter in the sand. We'll see. I'll be using this white paste by Alumilite. Of course, my handy dandy sand. You have to have sand for a beach. And I will also be putting a white mica powder from Let's Resin into the sand, just to give it a little bit of extra glow. Get this out of the way here. And we'll start mixing our colors. I have not used acrylic pouring paint in resin before, so this is going to be new. And I'm going to put about an ounce in each of these cups, an ounce of resin, the clear resin. And gotta be careful to not put too much because I've got to put a liquid paint in here. When you're working with paste, it's a little bit easier because you just put a little bit of paste on the tip of your stirring stick and you mix it in. But with the pouring paint, it's going to add volume. And the rule of the thumb with pouring paints is about 10%. So if you've got 30 milliliters of fluid, you would put 3 milliliters of pouring paint. And I'm going to put a little extra in this one so I can make my waves. So I've got 3 cups, blue, turquoise, and sand, and a 4th one to make my waves. This is a little bit more of a complex project for a beginner, but you can do it. It just takes patience and perseverance. So let's start with the sapphire pouring paint and our mica powder. I want to make sure I get these mixed in really well. That is going to be the challenge, working in a small cup. I wish I would have used the Dixie cups, the like the 3 ounce solo cups. That would have made stirring a whole lot easier. So there's a lot of learnings already coming from coming from this tutorial. Use the bigger cups. It makes stirring a whole lot easier. I'll try to get this in the center where you can see it and not spill everything. Just going to mix this mica powder in here and kind of get an idea for the shimmering and the depth of the blue. The depth of the blue is, I'm hoping, going to come more from the pouring paint. This is a lovely ocean blue. I love this color. So this was the dark blue. And let's see if I can do this without spilling this. All right. This is such a rich color. I'm really not sure how much I need to start with. So let's go with a little. And again, I could put this in a bigger cup and add more resin to it if I need to, if I put too much pouring paint in there. And it looks like it's mixing pretty well in there. That was my concern. I know when we're using paste, the pastes mix really well, like I said. But I had this acrylic pouring paint, and I'm like, all right, I need to use it. I'm going to put in a little bit more. I'm not sure that I'm getting the darkness and the depth I want in here. So we're going to add a little more. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do some other coasters side by side, only using mica powder and sapphire blue dye. So we'll have something to compare to. We'll be able to see what the pouring paint looks like versus what using a dye and mica powder is. I don't have blue paste, so I'm using what I have, folks, using what I have. I think this is going to be good. Looks a little opaque, or a little translucent to me, but we shall see. We'll leave it for now. And if you don't want to watch me mix these additional colors, you can fast forward. Highly encourage you to do that. This can be very tedious. Now we'll go with the turquoise and the green. And the goal is to make a turquoise. I don't know, maybe I'll put a little dark blue in there too. We'll have to see what the color comes out to be. I actually like to use a sky blue and this green mica powder. That gives it more of a contrast, like that, dark blue to a lighter blue-green ocean look. But that's the beautiful thing. This is art. You get to do what you want. Yeah, let's use this instead. This stirring stick is a little bit easier than the big popsicle sticks. I love the pearlescent colors of the greens and the blues in this Let's Resin mica powder. They all are pearlescent, but the blues and the greens when you're working on an ocean scene are just so pretty. Some people don't use mica powders in their beach scenes. All right, let's go ahead and do the pouring paint and see what we get here. And I'm not sure. I can't just put a dab on here. It was much easier using the popsicle stick when I wanted to put the amount of pouring paint on here, but do what is easy for you, people. Keep it simple. I'm pretty sure I'll knock one of these pouring paint bottles over before this tutorial is over. Tutorial, experiment, whatever it is we're doing here. I'm a little chicken to put too much in here, even though I can add more resin. When you do this, have fun doing this, enjoy it. Sometimes they turn out beautiful and you're just wowed by your work, and other times you just want to throw it in the garbage can. I always say put it away for a couple of days and come back and look at it because it usually looks a whole lot better the next day. Or even like a few days later, you look back at some of your work and you say, wow, you know what? That was actually really pretty. That turned out well. Just going to make sure I've got this blended really well. That's going to be really important. And I hope it stays blended. That's another concern I have. Again, I haven't used pouring paint in resin, so, and I'm wondering if maybe I should have used the fast curing resin, the resin that sets in 4 hours. It's a little bit thicker, and it may have blended a little bit better, but we'll see. We will use that thicker resin a little bit later when we go to do some doming at the end, but we'll save that convo for later. Now, here's where, okay, I should have put the sand in first and then put the resin on top of the sand. So this is gonna be a little bit challenging here. And honestly, I hate working with sand, if truth be told, because it gets all over everything. It gets all over my mat, it gets all over my stirring sticks. It's just a pain, but quite necessary. Poured a little of that resin off because I just didn't have enough room for my sand. And I like my sand to be thicker. I always worry if it's going to set if I put too much sand, but it always sets. And I like this to be about the consistency of oatmeal, not runny oatmeal, but thicker oatmeal. That way it stays in place when I pour it into the molds. Get that off there. Sand, sand. It's like going to the beach. Get sand all over everything and drag it home. All right, let's give this a stir. I don't think I'm going to put the glitter in this time. I think I'm just going to use the mica powder. And I got to get way down into the bottom of this and make sure that all of the sand is moist and equally wet. Because this is the regular epoxy resin by Let's Resin, the working time is about 40 minutes, so I don't have to rush through this. I can take my time and make sure that I'm mixing everything well and not slopping everything all over the place trying to get done in a fast manner. And again, feel free to fast forward through this. It can be very, very boring. And I'm sure you don't want to listen to me drone on for 30 minutes. So let's go ahead and we'll add this, this mica powder here. This one is actually the seashell, and it has a little bit of a, not quite a white hue, but a little bit more of a, kind of an off-white hue, so the beach sand isn't quite so white. But truth be told, I love the white the best. But we're playing today. We're trying different things, so stir that in really well. I'm going to make sure the color is evenly distributed. And the mica powder in the sand doesn't quite have the same effect as it does in the clear resin, but it still gives it a real pretty glow, if you will. This is a little too thick, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more. A little more resin. Let me get that blended nicely. Okay. It is pouring time. Let's get this sand off this mat. I don't have the heating mat on just yet. I didn't want to turn it on too soon because then all of my stuff would start to cure. All of my colors and my sand would start to cure a little bit too quickly. So I will turn the mat on after I have poured. Sorry guys, I cannot stand getting resin all over my arms, so have to clean this up. And let's start pouring. So I'm going to start with the sand here. And it is very, very thick. Okay, let's go ahead and pour the blue. Let's start at the top. And that is a really pretty deep blue. Absolutely love it. So I don't want this to be completely opaque. I do want you to be able to see a little bit through it. And the green. I'm not totally in love with this. I'm thinking I should have made it a little more blue. Or turquoise. I'm just going to fill this in. Get up next to the sand. And up next to the blue. And I'm filling these molds about 2/3 full. I don't want to come up to the top because I'm going to be blowing some waves and I'll blow the resin right out of the out of the mold. And let's go ahead and put some starfish in here. I got these on Amazon and I will put a link in the description below with all of the materials I use, like I usually do for you, especially if you're beginning to work with resin. It's always nice to know what people are using so you can at least try to come close to what you're seeing people make. I got these cute little shells. The ones I used in a previous video came from Bonita Beach in Bonita Springs, Florida. These ones were purchased because they're small and I know they will fit in the mold. They have to stay below the surface level or the top of the mold. So that's another small one. That should work. If you don't, keep them below the top fill level of the mold. They'll pop out of the top of your resin. So when you go to set a cup or a glass on there, it won't sit flat. You'll have a shell protruding from the top. So you need to make sure that your shells are going to fit into the mold and you're able to keep them below that top level line of the mold. I'm not sure if I'm clear on what I'm trying to say, but okay, let's go ahead and mix up the white for our waves. We're going to be using this white paste by Alumilite, which is a really nice paste when you're trying to make waves. And I just want a dash. Ooh, that's more than a dash. You don't want your white resin to be too thick because it'll make blowing the waves out very difficult. So this you want to be thinner, and this actually might be a little too thick, but we'll play. You can always add more resin to this if we need to. Let's see what we got here. Just going to run a line right along the green and the sand. This seems to be okay. I'd like it to be a little thinner, but it is workable. That little blob on the left is going to be fun to blow out, but hey, we'll see what we get. Just going to put another line out here. And don't worry, I'm not going to leave that big old blue and green line of demarcation there. I'm going to swirl those in a little bit. I should have done it before I did this part. But I was so focused on my waves and making my waves come out the way I want them to that I didn't swirl the blue and the green together first. But that's okay. We'll get it in a minute. Another lesson learned, swirl your blue and green together first, then put down the white for your waves. All right, here's my heat gun. I'm going to put it on low. And I'm going to come at a very flat angle. Before I do that, I'm actually going to heat the resin. This is a new technique I saw Marcy at Mixed Media Girl do, where she heated the resin above where she was going to blow the waves. So let's go ahead and swirl this a little bit here. So when you heat the resin, that blue and green resin, it makes the white push easier into the warmer resin. Normally I would do this in two parts. So I would mix the blue and the green in the sand, come back tomorrow, add the white, and blow out the waves over clear resin. We're not doing that today. We're not going to blow over clear resin. We're going to blow over the resin that's already there, the colors. So again, a very flat angle, and I'm just going to push this out. And this gets hot very quickly. The resin gets hot very quickly, but so does the tip of my blower. Oh, it's coming out really nice. All right, these have blown out nicely, so we're going to come back in about 2 hours and see if this is ready for the next step, which will be adding a top coat to this. So I will see you back in about 2 hours, which will be about 2 seconds for you. All right, it's been a couple hours. You'll notice there are 5 coasters here. There's a 6th one off to the side. I've taken these off the heat mat. I found out a couple of things I didn't like about the heat mat. Before I get into that, I'm just pouring some resin that I mixed. And I will fill these just about to the top, or about, as close to the top as I can get. And maybe I'll get lucky and I won't have to dome them. So just going to go ahead and pour this out. I'm not going to put these back on the heat mat. Number one, the bottom part's already set for the most part. So I'm not sure if I put them back on the heat mat what that would do. The other thing is the heat mat started to bow a little bit, and it caused my coasters to not be level. So I don't know, maybe I need to keep it on a flat surface and not put it on my glass leveling table. So I'm just going to move this resin around a little bit and take it to all the corners the best I can. And I'm going to do that on each one of these. I'll go ahead and fast forward so you don't have to watch me do this this process as well. You can watch, but you don't have to listen to me talk. How about that? All right, I'll be back in a sec.
High clouds drifting away, leaving no shadows under. First step out of the maze, follow the path and wander. And we go with no illusions. And we leave all our conclusions. finding the strength to be bold. And we go with no illusions. And we leave all our conclusions. Remember, hope instead. The best is up ahead. Oh, living with no regret. Oh, we don't have to look back. All fears run clear. Living with no regret.
Okay, now that I've got the resin pushed to all the corners, let's go ahead and hit this with the torch. And we have to do this very quickly so that we don't burn the mold and we don't burn the resin. So I'll hit this up. We'll let this sit for 24 hours and I'll come back tomorrow. Okay, we're back. We have the unveiling. And I take my handy dandy little screen that I use so I don't get lint and dust and everything. Cat hair. Put that away for now. And let's proceed with the unveiling. And I'm not going to tell you which of the square ones is the one with the acrylic pouring paint. See if I can get in here a little close so I don't make y'all sick. Turn this light on so it's a little bit brighter. Okay, here's number one. And front and back. Does have transparency. Looks like there may have been a little bit of separation or mixing issue with that one. And again, I mixed these other ones off camera. So 4 of these are done, 4 of the squares are done with sapphire blue dye, blue mica powder, and a green dye and a green mica powder. Back set nicely. So there's the backs of the 2. You're probably getting a feel for which one is the acrylic pouring paint. This one is clearly the acrylic pouring paint. Not quite as thin and translucent on the back. It's a little bit darker. There's some spots where it's a little bit lighter. You look at the back, so you can kind of see there's some variation, and that's probably from me blowing some of that white into the green and into the blue. That turned out pretty nice. Let's take a look at these others. So is this one, I don't like the wave on this one very much, but even the backs are pretty in these. We're going to dome these because I didn't fill them quite as full as I probably would have liked to have, but that's okay. We'll give them a nice rounded effect. So is this the acrylic pouring paint with the square one? I don't know, or could it be this one? You'll have to stay tuned for the great reveal. The edges came out pretty even, so I'm not going to have to sand these. I'm happy with that. And the backs are really, you can flip these over and use them on the back as well. This is one that I went back. You can see here where the pouring paint did separate a little bit, and you can see it's quite thin. So I really didn't mix that one very well. You see my hand through the back. Which I had a friend look at this and say it was okay. She said it's the ocean. You're going to have that variation. So this turned out really nice. We'll see. All right, let's go ahead and dome these. I'll mix up this resin here real quickly, and we'll come back and we'll pour the resin over the tops of these. And The Let's Resin Fast Cure uh, epoxy resin is very nice to use. It's thicker, so when you're going to dome coasters or another project, it just makes it easier for doming purposes given its thicker viscosity. So I really like using that for doming purposes. So we're just going to mix this up here and make sure it's thoroughly mixed. And I'm using a hand mixer this time, which works better, I think, with the thicker viscosity resins rather than doing a stir stick. All right, we are done mixing, and we are going to go ahead and let this sit for 5 minutes and come back. Okay, it's time to pour. It's been 5 minutes, so let's get this resin out onto these coasters and get this spread out and let the doming begin. I'll just show you the couple here, the 4, and be done with it. Just like I did with the molds when I filled them, I'm going to push the resin out to the margins. This is a self-leveling resin, so you really almost don't have to push the resin out to the margins. But I am impatient and I want to make sure I've got enough resin in each of these, on top of each of these coasters, so that they dome appropriately and they have about the same amount. So it just helps. So I'll go ahead and I will get this poured on here and I'll come back. All right, let's go ahead and hit this with a little bit of heat. I'm just going to use my long neck lighter here and get rid of any bubbles. And I'm going to go over each one of these, and we'll come back tomorrow and take a look at the final product, and we will see which one is actually the acrylic pouring paint coaster. Okay, we're back for the great reveal. Can you guess which one of these 5 squares is the paint? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? Which one is the acrylic pouring paint? Well, we know these 2 round ones was the acrylic pouring paint, and there's a lot of inconsistency in the colors. But number 3, if you guessed number 3, number 3 is our acrylic pouring paint, and it is actually pretty thin. It's okay. I say thin, but translucent, transparent. This one here was done with the mica powder and the dyes, so the blue dye and the green dye. And I used a sky blue in the green to come up with that darker mixture. So there you have it. I'm not sure I'm overly thrilled with the final result of the acrylic pouring paint, but that'll take a little more play. I'm not sure I'm thrilled with the heat mat either, so I've got to learn to play with that a little bit more and see if I actually like the heat mat. I love that my stuff was done in 2 hours and I was able to come back to the project, but I wasn't happy that the heat mat kind of folded up in the middle, if you will, or kind of bulged in the middle and made my surface unlevel. So I'll have to do a little bit of research there to see, you know, what I did wrong or what we can do differently. So anyway, here they are. This is your final 5, with the upper right hand corner being the acrylic pouring paint. I don't think there's a whole lot of difference just looking at it that you can see until you pick them up. But anyway, I hope it was a good lesson for you today. I know it was for me. As always, thanks for jumping on and joining me. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I always appreciate those thumbs up. Give me some feedback in the comments, and until next time, guys, thank you so much. Be safe, and I'll see you again on the next video.